Bruchim Haba'im and Erev Tov, everyone. Welcome and good evening. It is a pleasure to be able to share Kol Nidre with you this evening. In general, in the past, we would begin this service with a processional of Torahs coming in, carried by past presidents and members of their family. But as we all know, this year is different. So this year, our processional will be pictures of all the past presidents from the beginning of this congregation's history. And in sharing these pictures at this point in time, our hope and our intent is to have all of us feel as if we are all walking in, we are all coming in together, for our past presidents represent all of the congregation. All of us coming in to share this sacred moment. Following the processional, we will have a reading and the lighting of the Yizkor candles, and following that, lighting of the Shabbat candles.
Rabbi, I believe it's the Yontif candles?
Oh, right. Excuse me, the Yontif candles. Thank you very much, Cantor Aronoff.
Sure.
I haven't forgotten you, even though it's been some time now since I've seen your face, touched your hand, heard your voice. You are with me all the time. I used to think you left me. I know better now. You come to me. Sometimes in fleeting moments I feel your presence close by. But I still miss you. And nothing, no person, no joy, no accomplishment, no distraction, not even God, can fill the gaping hole your absence has left in my life. But mixed together with all my sadness, there was a great joy for having known you. I want to thank you for the time we shared, for the love you gave, and for the wisdom you spread. Thank you for the magnificent moments and for the ordinary ones too. There was beauty in our simplicity, holiness in our unspectacular days. And I will carry the lessons you taught me always. Your life has ended, but your light can never be extinguished. It continues to shine upon me even on the darkest nights and illuminates my way. I light this candle in your honor and in your memory. May God bless you as you have blessed me with love, with grace, and with peace. Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Yom HaKippurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Once there was a cruel king who was hated by his subjects, but as he grew more powerful, he became more lonely and more isolated, and his face was creased with lines of malice and hostility. Then one day, he met a beautiful woman. He fell in love and decided she had to be his wife. So he got dressed in all his royal splendor. But when he looked in the mirror, he saw a cruel, sadistic face, and he was convinced she would be repelled by his ugliness. So he sent for a magician, and he said, "Make me a mask of thin wax and paint it so my face looks handsome and compassionate, and then fasten the mask to my face so I'll never have to remove it. And I will pay whatever you ask." The magician replied, "I'll do it on one condition. The only way the mask can work is if you keep your face in conformity with its lines. Otherwise, the paint will crack. One angry frown, and the mask will be destroyed forever." The king readily agreed. "Whatever you say," he said. "Just tell me how to keep the mask from cracking." "Well, you have to start thinking kind thoughts and performing compassionate deeds," the magician said. "Instead of building your army and navy, build hospitals and schools. Instead of looking at the world with anger, look at people with love." And the king agreed. So the magician fashioned the mask, and he now looked handsome and kind. The beautiful woman fell in love with him, and they were married. The months went by happily for the royal couple, and though every once in a while the king would almost ruin the mask with a cruel gesture or angry frown, He always caught himself, and somehow the mask remained intact. After some years, he began to feel guilty. He felt he was deceiving his wife. So he summoned the magician once more. "Take off my mask," he said. "I can't stand the deception." The magician warned, "If I do, I won't be able to make you another. You'll have to wear your own face forever." The king thought, and then he said, "Take it off." The magician removed the mask, and the king approached the mirror fearfully. And to his amazement, what he saw was his own face, which had become exactly like the mask he'd worn for so long. A face that was kind, loving, and compassionate. And when his wife entered the room, she saw the face she had always loved. And so on Kol Nidre night, we approach our God, and with humility and hope, with strength and tears, we declare all the vows on our lips, the burdens in our hearts, the pent-up regrets about which we brooded and spoke through prayers without end on last Atonement Day, did not change our way of life, did not bring deliverance in the year that has gone. From mountain peaks of fervor, we fell into the valley of common ways at the close of the fast. Will you hear our regret, O God? Will you open our prison and release us from the shackles of habit? Will you accept our prayers, forgive our wrongs, though we sin again and again? In moments of weakness, we don't remember the promises of Atonement Day. Oh God, recall that we easily forget. Take only our hearts content. Forgive us, pardon us. Help each of us to do better this coming year. Amen.
בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. כל נדרי ויסרי וחרמי וקונמי וכינויי וכינוסי ושבועות דין דרנה ודאיש תבנה ודיחרימנה ודיעשרנה על נפשתנה מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים. הבא עלינו לטובה. כל הון
v'yesarei v'acharamei v'konamei v'chinuyei v'kinusei u'shavuot. Din darna u'deishtabana u'deacharimana v'diasarna al nafshatana miyom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim haba aleinu letova kulhon icharat navehon kulahon yehon sharan shevikin shevitin betelin umevutalin lasheririn velakayamin nidrana la nidre v'yesarana la esare ushvuatana la Shavuot. Kol nidre v'yesarei v'acharamei v'konamei v'chinuyei v'kinusei
Al
לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה. ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה. ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה. סלח נא לעוון העם הזה כגודל חסדך, וכאשר נשאת לעם הזה ממצרים ביד הנה, ושם נאמר, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
This night is different in so many ways, not only because of the pandemic and being stuck behind plexiglass, but it's also different and unique because on this night and on this day, tonight and tomorrow, when we say the Shema, we say out loud the line following Shema Yisrael. What's interesting about that line is not only is this the only day on which we recite it, but it's also the line following the Shema, tucked in between the Shema and the V'ahavta, is the only line in the prayer of the Shema that is not from the Torah itself. It is added. And in the rabbinic imagination, it is added for the following reason. There is a midrash, one of my favorites, that looks at the Shema and imagines this is occurring on Jacob's deathbed. And Jacob on his deathbed is concerned. He's concerned about the future. He's concerned about his children and will they follow in the ways that he and his father and his grandfather have laid out. Will they stay connected to God? Will they stay connected to tradition that they're creating? And when he articulates this concern on his deathbed, his children, according to the rabbis, respond to him, Shema Yisrael, hear Israel, that being one of Jacob's other names. Adonai Eloheinu, the Lord is our God, don't worry. Adonai Echad, this one is the only one, the source of all life in this world. And Jacob, in hearing his children's response, bows his head in gratitude and says, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Praised and blessed be the name of the one whose glorious sovereignty is forever and ever. And so, as we prepare and turn to page 207 for the Baruch Hu and the prayers before the Shema, and we say the Shema, let us remember that we say that Baruch Shem Kavod line out loud. But let us also try to place ourselves with Jacob and with his children and understand this as an affirmation, a powerful affirmation from one generation to the next, acknowledging our connection to God and to Judaism, and ultimately to one another. Page 207, I invite everyone to please rise for the call to worship, the Baruch Hu.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני
Baruch hu Baruch Shema.
לילה 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 המעריב ערבים.
Amen.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו ובהם נגה יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני
Baruch hu Baruch Shema.
Lai na nai 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 lai 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 nai nai lai 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 oev amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Le'olam Va'ed Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol miodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך
We continue with the second and third paragraphs of the Shema to the bottom of page 209.
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
On the bottom of page 209, we continue with Emet ve'emunah.
Emet ve'emunah, Emet ve'emunah, Emet ve'emunah kozot. Ve'kayam aleinu, Emet ve'emunah kozot. Ki hu Adonai Eloheinu, ve'yein zulato, v'anachnu Yisrael, Yisrael amo. Emet ve'emunah, Emet ve'emunah, Emet ve'emunah kozot. Ve'kayam aleinu, Emet ve'emunah kozot. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל, לך אנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נעלה בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא.
מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה, זה אלי אנו ויאמרו
אדוני נמלוך לעולם ועד.
ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני.
ברוך הוא וברוך שמו. לי לי לי
גאל ישראל.
Amen.
We turn now to page 211, Hashkivenu.
Lai na nai 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 na nai, lai la lai 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 la lai, lai 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 nai nai, lai lai lai, yai na nai 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 na nai, yai la lai 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 la lai, la lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai. Hashkiveinu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, veHamideinu Malkeinu leChayim. Hashkiveinu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, veHamideinu Malkeinu leChayim. Ushmor tzeiteinu, uvoeinu, lechaim u'shalom, me'ata v'ad olam. Hashkiveinu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, veHamideinu Malkeinu leChayim. Hashkiveinu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, veHamideinu Malkeinu leChayim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch Hu, Baruch Shema.
Haporei sukat shalom. Aleinu v'yal kol amo Yisrael v'yal Yerushalayim.
Amen. Turn now to page 212. I invite everyone to please rise. Does this work when you're at home? Anyway, page 212, we rise, Ki v'yom hazeh.
Ki vayom hazeh yechaper alechem letaher etchem mikol chatotechem lifnei Adonai titaru. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alema divrach hirutei, ve'yamlich malechutei, b'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'chayedechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'meru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'le'ol me'ol maya yitbarach yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam ve'yitnaseh ve'yitadar ve'yit'aleh ve'yit'halal Shemei Tekudesha berichu le'ela ule'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbecha נחמתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן.
We now turn to page 213, and if you're not already, I invite you to please rise for the beginning of the Amidah. It goes from page 213 to page 221, and is our opportunity to begin a process of self-reflection. The verb to pray in Hebrew, lihitpalel, is a reflexive verb, and this is a time for us to come using the Hebrew, using the English, using our own meditations of our own hearts and souls, to come forward, stand before God, and use this as a moment to reflect upon ourselves, reflect upon our own souls, and to do the kind of work, the kind of soul work that we need to do to become more human and better human beings. Page 213.
A psychology professor who had no children of his own would frequently reprove a neighbor scolding his child, saying, "You shouldn't do that. You should love your boy and not punish him." But one hot summer day, the professor was fixing his concrete driveway, and after several hours of work, he put down a trowel and wiped the perspiration from his brow, and he started to go into the house. But just then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a mischievous little boy putting his foot into the fresh cement. He rushed over and he grabbed him, and he was about to spank him when the neighbor leaned from a window and said, "Watch it, Professor. Don't you remember? You must love the child." And the psychologist turned, pulling back furiously, and said, "I love him in the abstract, just not in the concrete." Clearly, we're not living in normal times, and the proof of that can be seen by an empty sanctuary. In normal times, synagogues are more crowded on Kol Nidre and Yom Kippur than on any other time of the year, for it's a time when we try to be honest with ourselves and translate the symbolic abstractions of all the sins that we might have committed, listed in the Matzah, into the concrete, generous behavior that reflects the ethical ideals that make Judaism the special way of life that we strive to embrace. For it's a day when we try to be more honest with ourselves, admit our failings, and strive to be better human beings, the kind of human beings God wants us to be. One of the sins worth pondering is the sin of envy. Everyone commits that sin. The Talmud says that all of us are envious at some time in our lives, with the possible exception of the success of our children. When they succeed, we are proud. But except for this category, most everyone is envious at one time or another. Rabbi David Wolpe gives a striking example. There is a certain poet who once wrote, "Desiring this man's art and that one's scope, with what I most enjoy, content at least in these thoughts, myself almost despising." Do you hear what this poet is saying? That envy is corrupting his heart, that he wants this one's popularity and that one's good looks, and most of all, another person's talent and ability. He's so envious of other people that he almost despises himself. Do you know who this poet was, who envied the talent of others? William Shakespeare, who is considered by most people to have been a fairly good poet himself. That's how widespread and how destructive envy is. And that's why I believe that envy is probably the most popular sin on this entire list. Now, the Hebrew word for envy is sarot ayin, and it literally means narrowness of the eyes. If we say that someone has open eyes, it means that they lock out the world with a sense of wonder, astonishment, excitement, and enthusiasm. If we say that someone has narrow eyes, it means that they are suspicious, distrusting, and mean-spirited, to the point where anything that someone else has, whether it's talent or possessions or whatever, makes them heartsick. Dear friends, we are suffering from a distressing division between the truths we affirm and the values that we actually live by. Yom Kippur urges us to narrow the gap between what we profess and what we practice, between our feelings and our deeds. It summons us to restore our battered integrity, to bridge the divide within ourselves. It implores us to become whole. Dear friends, this is the 51st year that I have participated officiating on the High Holy Days of our beloved synagogue. I started when I was 2. But over the years, it became clear to me that this is more than a synagogue. Adat Ariel is a community. It's a place for education, for nurturing our Jewish souls through the religious services that connect us to our people for more than 2,000 years. Adat Ariel is a community which embraces us and allows us to participate in activities for children and adults. But now we are facing serious financial difficulties. The pandemic has affected us severely. So now we must respond to this financial crisis. Community is a two-way street. Just as the synagogue community is there to help our members when they are in need, we implore our members to come to the aid of Adat Ariel when the community is in need. With your help, with your participating in our Kol Nidre appeal, we will survive this difficult time and come out stronger than ever. But we need everyone to participate. Friends, we are here to sustain our members when they are in need. Whether it be a happy or sad occasion, we are here for you. Whether it is a class or social event, we are here for you. Whether it's to involve you in activities that make you feel more connected to your Jewish roots, we are here for you. And now, in our most challenging time, we need you to be here for us, for our sacred institution, for the oldest synagogue in the San Fernando Valley, for Adat Ariel. In this world of amazing technology, on everyone's screen there is a button to click to support our community. Click that button, and we will strengthen and give new life to our shul, a place that gives energy and life to us, a place that all of us can call home. Amen.
The Machzor has many, many words in it. Many different prayers, many different tefillot, many different readings. And each year, different readings strike me differently. Even though we've been fortunate to use this Machzor now for a number of years, the following that I wish to share captures what I believe this next section is all about, and really what I believe this day and every day can and should be about. It's a poem by Merle Feld, and it actually is in our Machzor on page 204, if at some point in time you wish to read it and contemplate it for yourself. It says, I am grateful for this, a moment of truth, grateful to stand before you in judgment. You know me as a liar, and I'm flooded with relief to have my darkest self exposed at last. Every day I break my vows to be a dutiful child, selfless parent, caring friend, and responsible citizen of the world. No one sees, no one knows how often I take the easy way. I let myself off the hook, give myself the benefit of the doubt. Every day, every day. On this day, this one day, I stand before you naked, without disguise, without embellishment, naked, shivering, ridiculous. I implore you, let me try again. Let me try again. These words capture so much about what Yom Kippur is about, and about this next section that we're about to begin. On page 223, we have the section that's known as the Slichot, and it contains within it some of the most recognizable prayers of this day. Yeshamnu, Al Chet. All of these prayers, when we take them together, are all about asking God, asking each other, and asking ourselves, let me try again. We all fall. We all fail. That is not a question. That is a given. The question is, will you try again?
Ya'ale tachanunenu me'erev v'yavo shavatenu miboker v'yera erinunenu ad arev.
בקשתנו עד ערב, ויראה בקשתנו עד ערב. יערה את גתנו מערב, ויבוא אליך מבוקר, ויראה אלינו עד ערב, ויראה אלינו עד ערב.
We continue now on page 227, Ki Hine Kachomer.
כי הנה כך אומר ביד היוצר, ברצותו מרחיב וברצותו מקצר, כן אנחנו בידך חסד נוצר, לברית הבית ועל תפן ליצר. כי הנה כאבן בידם סתת, ברצותו אוחז וברצותו מחטט, כן אנחנו בידך מחיה וממוטט, לברית הבית ועל תפן ליצר. כי הנה כגרזן בידך רש, ברצותו דיבק לאור וברצותו פרש, כן אנחנו בידך תומך אני והרש, לברית הבית ועל תפן ליצר.
אל מלך יושב,
אל מלך יושב,
על כיסא רחמים,
על כיסא רחמים, מתנהג בחסידות, מוחל עוונות עמו, מתנהג בחסידות, מוחל עוונות עמו.
מעביר ראשון,
מעביר ראשון,
מעביר ראשון,
מעביר ראשון, הרבה מחילה, מחילה לחטאים, וסליחה לפושעים, לפושעים, וסליחה לפושעים, לפושעים.
עושה צדקות עם כל בשר ורוח, ולא חרדת עם תגמור.
עושה צדקות עם כל בשר ורוח, ולא וחר לנו היום ברית 13 כמו שהודעת לעניו מקדם כמו שכתוב וירד אדוני בענן ויתייצב עמו שם ויקרא בשם אדוני. ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא אדוני אדוני אל רחום וחנון ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת נוצר חסד לאלפים נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה אדוני אדוני אל רחום וחנון ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת נוצר חסד לאלפים נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה אדוני אדוני אל רחום וחנון ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת נוצר חסד לאלפים נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה וסלחת לעווננו ולחטאתנו ונחלתנו.
We now turn to page 233 for Shema Kolenu.
Shema, Shema, Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, V'kabel Hashivenu Adonai elecha. Hashivenu v'nashuva. Chadesh yameinu, Chadesh yameinu, kekedem. Shema, 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 Shema. Al tashlichenu, al tashlichenu, li'etzikna, li'etzikna. Yichelot lochenu, ki chelot chulchenu.
Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, slach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu. Ki anu amecha ve'ata Eloheinu, anu vanecha ve'ata avinu, anu avadecha ve'ata adonenu, anu kehalecha ve'ata chelkenu, anu nachalatecha ve'ata goralenu, anu tzonecha ve'ata roenu, anu charmecha ve'ata notreinu, anu filetecha ve'ata yotzreinu, anu rayatecha ve'ata dodenu, anu segulatecha ve'ata krovenu, anu amecha ve'ata malkeinu, anu mamirecha ve'ata mamireinu.
In the middle of page 234, we continue with Anu Azefanim.
אנו הזייפנים, ואתה רחום וחנון. אנו קשי עורף, ואתה ערך אפיים. אנו מלאי עוון, ואתה מלא רחמים. אנו ימינו כצל עובר, ואתה ושנותיך לא יתמו.
We rise as we turn to page 235, Ashamnu.
אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, תבוא לפניך תפילתנו, ואל תתעלם מתחינתנו, שאין אנחנו הזייפנים וקשי עורף. לא אמר לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו, אבל אנחנו ואבותינו ואמותינו חטאנו. איי 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 Ashamnu,
Ashamnu,
Bagadnu,
Bagadnu,
Gazalnu,
Gazalnu,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Dibarnu Dofi.
Ay 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 He'evinu,
Evinu,
Vehirshanu,
Vehirshanu,
Zadnu,
Zadnu,
Hamasnu,
Hamasnu,
Tafalnu Sheker,
Tafalnu Sheker.
Ay 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 Yatsnura,
Yatsnura,
Kizavnu,
Kizavnu,
Latsnu,
Latsnu,
Maradnu,
Maradnu,
Niatsnu,
Niatsnu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Pashanu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Kishinu Oref,
Kishinu Oref.
Ay 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 Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shichatnu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Tainu,
Tainu,
Titanu,
Titanu.
סרנו ממצוותיך וממשפטיך הטובים ולא שבה לנו, ואתה צדיק על כל הבא עלינו, כי אמר עשית ואנחנו הרשענו.
We now turn to page 237 for the Al-Khates.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בבלי דעת, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בביטוי על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביודעים ובלא יודעים, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו כפר לנו. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכחש ובכזב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכפת שוחד, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלעטון, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעיניים רמות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעזות מצח, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפריקת עול, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפלילות. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצניעות, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בתשומת יד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בתימהון לבב, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו.
We turn now to page 243 as we rise and the ark is opened, Avinu Malkeinu.
אבינו מלכנו חטאנו לפניך, אבינו מלכנו אין לנו מלך אלא אתה, אבינו מלכנו עשה עמנו למען שמך, אבינו מלכנו חדש עלינו שנה טובה, אבינו מלכנו בטח מלך. אבינו מלכנו החזירנו בתשובה שלמה לפניך,
אבינו מלכנו חזרנו בתשובה שלמה לפניך,
אבינו מלכנו שלח רפואה שלמה לחולי עמך,
אבינו מלכנו שלח רפואה שלמה לחולי עמך,
אבינו מלכנו זוכרנו בזיכרון טוב לפניך,
אבינו מלכנו זוכרנו בזיכרון טוב לפניך,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר חיים טובים,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר חיים טובים,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר גאולה וישועה,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר גאולה וישועה,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר פרנסה וכלכלה,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר פרנסה וכלכלה,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר זכויות,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר זכויות,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר סליחה ומחילה,
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר סליחה ומחילה,
אבינו מלכנו הצמח לנו ישועה בקרוב, אבינו מלכנו שמע קולנו חוס ברחם עלינו, אבינו מלכנו קדוש ברחמים ועצמך תפילתנו, אבינו מלכנו עשה למען באי ואש ובמים על קידוש שמך, אבינו מלכנו עשה למענך אם לא למעננו, אבינו מלכנו חוננו ועננו, אבינו מלכנו חוננו ועננו, כי אין בנו מעשים, עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד, עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. אבינו מלכנו חוננו ועננו. אבינו מלכנו חוננו ועננו כי אין בנו מעשים. לי 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 la 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 nai 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 nai
Kaddish Shalem, page 245.
יתקרא ויתקרא שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ימרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולימי עולמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפור ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה ולעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן ביומא ויאמרו אמן. תתקבל צלותיהן ובאותיהן דכל ישראל קודם אבוהן דבשמיא ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו אמן.
Erev Tov and Shana Tova, everyone. There is an old joke that says, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. The idea being that not only can we not agree amongst ourselves, we can't even agree with ourselves as a people. Unfortunately, this joke has become our national nightmare. Because we as a country right now cannot agree on seemingly anything at all. Well, that's not entirely true. In fact, that our country is in a total mess is one thing that we seem to all be able to agree on. But even about that, we differ. Half the nation seems to be saying, we know what's wrong with America and we can fix it. And the other half is saying, there is nothing wrong with America, and we can fix that. Everything feels right now as it's much more wrong than it ever was. And oddly, on the flip side, we feel we are much more right about all of it. As a result, we're all mad at each other and incensed that there are others who have different opinions and who actually get mad at us because we don't agree with them. How dare they? We say or think or feel. Such that it appears right now in our country's history that as Americans, we have actually managed to raise being offended and taking umbrage at any and all comments that we don't like to the level of almost being a mitzvah. It's almost as if we have a sacred obligation to be offended and go on the attack. And so the various tribes around which we center ourselves at any given moment and on any given issue are now engaged in all-out warfare. No longer do we see people who have different opinions as people. They're not even opponents. They are enemies. And as enemies, one can do with them and treat them however one wants to. We don't have to be decent anymore. We don't have to show respect. Your disagreeing with me no longer means that you just hold a different point of view. It means that you are other. And once I make you other, the step to making you less than human is an easy one to take. And what that does, what that allows, is it means that anything I say or do is now justified. Parts of our country are literally on fire, and we argue. Parts of our country are drowning, and we disagree. We can't agree on whether schools should open, beaches should close, and what to do about restaurants, salons, and gyms. We can't decide on who's an essential worker and who isn't. But it should be noted that all of a sudden, being considered essential is no longer necessarily a good designation. Look, as a country, we can't even agree on whether or not wearing a mask is important and appropriate. For a while, I have been feeling a real deep anger and dismay about what I see happening. At times, I've been incensed and have had to change the channel, distance myself from others, donate, or just vent. But with the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I'm beginning to see things a little bit differently. As I see the responses on the part of so many in our nation to her passing, and as I read the tributes, I begin to understand and I begin to realize from where my anger, my frustration, and my dismay are coming. You see, I'm in mourning. Granted, I haven't said Kaddish, and there's been no official burial, but I am heartbroken and in pain and just plain old grieving. I grieve. I grieve for the loss of over 200,000 Americans due to this pandemic. That's roughly 1,000 people per day. Just imagine, my friends, if in the news every single day we were reading about 3, 4, 5 planes filled with people crashing and everyone dying. Think how we'd react. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. I'm heartbroken by the non-physical losses that this pandemic has brought on. The loss of livelihoods and the businesses and the dreams that they represented that are now gone. With the closing of schools, we see our nation's children's education and emotional well-being suffer, as well as all the corollary benefits that schools provided evaporate. I am pained and feel pain for those who've lost their lives and for those whose pivotal life points have been either taken away, denied them, or diminished by this virus. With this virus, we mourn what our life once was. But it's not just the virus and the issues it brings that leaves me so deeply saddened. My heart breaks at the loss of who we are as a country and the ideals and norms by which we used to live. Racial injustice, sexism, and economic inequality are fully alive and present in our country and at levels that should shock and distress. The pandemic has highlighted and added accelerants to issues, but those issues were already there and had burrowed deep into our way of life. With this societal implosion that we're experiencing right now, We mourn for who we once were. And all of this is taking place on a planet that we have failed. In the Torah, we are taught that humanity is tasked with taking care of the world. And we are failing. The extreme weather patterns are but one manifestation of the impact we are having. And the refusal not only of those who do not believe in climate change, but even worse, those who believe in the science of climate change yet do not change their own ways of living as the same science dictates we should, breaks my heart. With what we are doing to our world, we mourn for what life on this planet was for us and will not be for our children or our grandchildren. We are surrounded and bombarded with all of this loss, all of this pain, all of this grief. Some of this, of course, is just part of life. Life is not fair. Politicians do not play nice. And there is always loss, pain, and suffering involved in living. But the constancy, the scale, and the intensity right now are just unrelenting. And to make matters worse, we know that in the past, there have been difficult challenges that we have faced as a country, that when we as Americans have been tested and we have risen to the moment. There have been times when we have been attacked, like in World War II and in 9/11, when we drew together to defend one another and our country. There have been times like landing on the moon, where we set ourselves a goal and a challenge, and we pulled together as a country, and we achieved. We can recall times when our leaders called us to put aside our differences about America and come together as Americans to face a common threat or a common goal. We mourn the loss of who we thought we were as a country. So what do we do? What do we do in moments when we are sitting in loss and pain? What do we do when we are grieving and mourning? For almost 25 years, it has been my honor and sacred obligation to serve you in moments of loss. I've been privileged to sit with you when you were sick in the hospital, hold your hand beside the bed of someone who you love who's dying, stand with you next to a casket of loved one who's to be buried, and shared words of comfort together with others as part of a Shiva minyan. Through all of this, you have been my teachers about how to deal with pain and grief. So tonight, for my last High Holiday talk, let me share with you a little of what you've taught me about how to deal with suffering and loss. First, you can never go back. When we experience some type of loss, we are eager, even though we know it will take time, to get back to normal and to the way our life was before the loss. We are hungry to return to the familiar and the way things were. But you have shown me that this is not the way it works. When we lose, we lose. When that person is no longer a part of our lives, there is no going back to a time before. They're gone. That part of our life is gone, and it is over. I think about this right now because I know that there are many people who are eager for Vice President Joe Biden to win the election because they think that if he wins, we're going to go back to the way things were. My friends, it won't happen. First, that America is gone. That is what we are grieving. That is part of our anger right now. And second, it's important to keep in mind that America was not as good as we like to think it was. The pandemic has laid bare for many the challenges that we had overlooked, and to go back to that would be wrong. To pretend that the things we've seen during this period of time should not be addressed is beneath us and shows moral cowardice. Our losses require our acceptance, and with that acceptance, we can begin to rebuild. Second, you've taught me that blame is not particularly useful. Oftentimes, in the face of loss, we use our time to grieve to assign blame. We blame ourselves for not doing enough, the doctors for not being able to cure, the nurses for not being able to minimize the pain, the person we lost for not taking care of themselves better. You have shown me, in fact, that there are infinite angles by which we can beat ourselves and others up when we are losing and suffering. And through the wisdom of so many of you, you have taught me that blame, like anger, is a natural reaction, but one so powerful that if we stay in it for too long, and most of us do, it stops us from being able to go forward. We cease to live and only live to blame. And that just feeds our anger and our upset. And it isn't that our anger and our blame are always wrong. On the contrary, I am really angry about a lot of what's been happening recently. Anger and blame are understandable responses to loss. It is our way of expressing that something that has happened feels wrong and hurtful to us. But you've also taught me that to hold on to it for too long eats our very souls. Right now, our national discourse feels like one massive blame game. To watch cable TV or read tweets or Facebook posts is to watch one side constantly blame the other for all that is wrong. And I get it. We all think that we are in the mess du jour because of the other side. Fine. It's all their fault. Fine. I get it. But people, we have problems, real problems, and they're not going to go away if we just blame one another. We have problems between individuals. We have problems between communities. We have problems between political parties. We have problems between countries. However, if all we're going to do is blame the other for why we're here, we will never leave here. Just as mourners must move on and move past blaming whoever they're blaming in order to re-enter the flow of life, so too we must at some time stop saying we're here because of the other and figure out how to live together with the other and solve the problems that we face with one another. Which brings me to the power of time. Time, they say, heals all wounds. To which I say, it can, but only if you let it. I have watched some of you struggle with your losses without acceptance and without letting go the anger and the blame. In addition, I have watched and we've spoken together about the difficulty in moving on because it feels like somehow you're betraying your loved one if you keep living, really living, and loving once again. All of that makes perfect sense. And you have shown me how that way of thinking leaves a person stuck, like a wheel spinning in the mud. And again, you've taught me, through your personal examples, that with courage, with support, and most importantly, with compassion, one can find the traction that one needs to go forward. I don't know how much time it will take us to process the loss of our country that we knew and that we loved. But I do know that we will need time to recover, to let the hurts go, and to engage with one another to rebuild a country that we can once again love. All of us as Americans feel the loss of what we loved about our country. Some of us have been feeling this loss for a long time. Some may have been feeling it for decades. Some are feeling it much more recently. But we are all feeling it, I think. And we're all suffering and in pain as a result. However, we have to ask, what do we do with the pain that is up right now? What do we do with the suffering that we're experiencing? Right now, it seems as if we have decided that pain and suffering bestow power. It seems as if the ones who suffer the most and have the most injustices heaped upon them are the ones who need to be heard, and only they should have a voice. So naturally, if that's the way society is being experienced, everyone is going to make a claim of suffering. Everyone is going to say that they're the victim of some kind of injustice. Most ridiculous example that I've come across: a woman claiming the injustice of wearing a mask because it interferes with her breathing is just like the injustice of the police strangling George Floyd. Absurd. Ridiculous. And it is easy to let the absurdity of this comparison mask the move underfoot. But really what we see there is a claim to suffering and pain, because in our culture today, pain seems to be power. Jewish tradition sees it differently. Our tradition challenges us not to hold on to our pain and to use it to justify what we do. On the contrary, Judaism teaches that our suffering should make us compassionate and empathetic. Hence, the most repeated commandment in the Torah is not about Shabbat. It's not about keeping kosher or praying or giving tzedakah or even honoring one's parents. The most repeated commandment in the Torah by far is, "You shall not oppress the widow, the orphan, or the stranger, for you yourselves were slaves in Egypt." You see, what the Torah is teaching us here is that through our pain and suffering, we understand those who are hurting, who are powerless, who've been taken advantage of. We understand because at one point in time in our history, that was us. And rather than use that to justify what we do to others, our tradition challenges us to use it as a way of deepening our own empathy for the suffering and pain of others. Our suffering is not meant to be a source of power, but of compassion. Now, does this mean that the many who have suffered during our country's history have no right to be angry, to articulate their pain, to demand a more just society? No, not at all. On the contrary, even while there is much that we have done, there is still so much more that we have to do when it comes to issues of equality and freedom as it plays out in race, in gender, in immigration, in economics, in so many different ways. There is so much to be addressed. I think it's partly why Justice Ginsburg's death cuts so deeply. I think so many fear that the fight that she not only carried on, but seemed to embody, the fight to protect the vulnerable, champion equality, and fight for those who do not have a voice, that there's no one else quite like her who can take up that fight in that way. And that too is something that we grieve. However, when we let our pain become our power, we become intolerant of others. They either bow down and express complete and utter devotion to the idol of our suffering, or they're deemed unbelievers. And in our day and age, unbelievers get canceled. Whereas Judaism teaches that if handled properly, our pain should make us more compassionate, not less. And with compassion comes forgiveness, not cancellation. Friends, there is much that we do not share, either as a country or, frankly, as a congregation. But one thing I believe we do have in common right now is our grief, our heartbreak, our suffering, our pain. The sources may be different, but the grief is shared. And maybe, just maybe, this can be a starting point. Maybe, just maybe, if we can acknowledge our shared loss and pain, and if we can use the lessons that come from dealing with it to grow in compassion, maybe we can find a way to rebuild and create a new shared vision of what this more perfect union could actually be. The political columnist Matthew Dowd asks about this moment: do we become more cynical, lose hope, and shut down? Or do we venture out with hope and a greater capacity for empathy and compassion and begin to build a country we can trust and fall back in love with? It's a vital, important question. It's a big question. But remember, my friends, the world is never saved by great big messianic gestures. Even the rabbis teach us that if someone should say the Messiah has come and you're planting a tree, finish planting the tree and then go greet the Messiah. Because we understand that it is not the big gesture, but the simple accumulation of gentle, soft, almost invisible acts of compassion, everyday acts of compassion that will save us. While there's not much that is within our control, this moment right now isn't just what it is also what we make of it. You and I have the power in our hands to begin rebuilding. It starts by how we treat the person next to us. So, my friends, let us acknowledge our losses, let us grieve, and let's let our pain help make us more compassionate, so that the next moment will be one that is filled with compassion. May we fill our year with compassion for ourselves, the ones we love, and the ones that we don't. Gemar Chatima Tova. Shana Tova, everyone.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבותה אל לבביך. כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. על כן נקבל לך אדוני אלוהינו תקן עולם במלכות שנה וכל בני מצרים. כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We now turn to page 248 for Psalm 27, the psalm for this season.
לדוד אדוני אורי וישי ממאירה, אדוני מעוז חיי ממלחמי. Join me on the seventh line down. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש. שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו. לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו. כי יצפנני בסולם ביום רעה יסכים לבן, אשר עובד אדוני שמע אדוני כל יקרב לולא האמנתי לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים, קווה אל אדוני חזק ויאמץ ליבך, וקווה אל אדוני.
We now turn to page 247 for the Mourner's Kaddish. I invite anyone who is currently reciting the Kaddish or observing your Yahrzeit to rise and join with me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uv'yamechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uv'izman kari v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam alomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei dekudashah b'richu. Le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Aseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen.
I'm so pleased you were able to join us this evening. Tonight, I wish to thank our administrative staff. With our executive director, Eric Nicastro, at the helm, the admin staff has shown amazing dedication and commitment during this very challenging time. So much of what enables our programs, schools, and synagogues to function happens because of the work that they do behind the scenes. In addition, an entire online community was created. Virtual Adat required a quick shift in thought and process to be able to ramp up programming, along with learning a whole host of new skills needed to keep up with technology. From all of us to all of our administrative staff, Toda Rabbah. I would like to highlight the programming we are doing during Sukkot. We will not only have our usual services on the holy days themselves, but we also have programming during the week. We invite you to join us for a script read and trivia night and other fun ways to come together and enjoy the holidays. Please check out our fantastic website. We will also have our traditional Yom Kippur discussion groups tomorrow from 2:30 to 4:45. While we are sorry we cannot provide the David Familian Chapel for people to take their usual Yom Kippur naps, the learning will be great, and among the topics discussed will be the environment, resilience, and gratitude. Gamar Hatima Tova, may you have a meaningful fast.
יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא בעיני המציאותו. אחד ויחיד כייחודו, נעלם וגם אינסוף לאחדותו. אין לו דמות הגוף, אינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו. קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו. הינו אדון עולם לכל נוצר, יורה גדולתו ומלכותו. שפע נבואתו נתנו, אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו. לא קם בישראל כמשה עוד נביא, ומביט את אמונתו. תורה דמת נתן לעמואל, על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו. לא יחליף האל ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזולתו. סופג יודע שטרנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו. גומל לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רע כרשעתו. ישלח לקץ ימים נשינו, לפדות מחטא קץ ישוע.